Hey guys, this is Teunuss for Run Up Once, and welcome to the second edition of my PO quiz. So yeah, let's get started. We'll start with the hand history, and then I'll give you I'll show you my line and my reasoning, and then I'll show you a couple of options, and then we'll go over the simulation together to see what the correct answer is. Yeah, let's get started with the first hand. So we roll 3-bet pre-flop with king queen off, which is a mix, and we see the 5-3-3 flop with a flush draw. So I think that in game I thought that this would just be a range bettable board for a half pot sizing, having like a pretty huge advantage here. So I went with the half pot option, and my opponent calls, turns the 8 of diamonds, so it brings second flush draw. And I thought in game that, you know, despite that the fact that this is not really a great hand to barrel, I thought with the range advantage that we have, and especially on a board like this, I thought that we would still be barreling this hand sometimes. I thought it would be like a roughly 50-50 mix, maybe like 40-ish%. And I thought that the preferred sizing would be 3/4. So I went ahead and bet 3/4 on the turn. And my opponent calls again. River brings in the king of clubs, and I thought with the stack to pot ratio that this would just be like pretty much a pure shove. I don't really see like a massive reason to use a hand like this as a check call, so I went ahead and shoved. So my line is pretty simple: bet with like a mix on the turn. So let's go ahead to the PowerPoint here, to the first slide. So what do you think our line should be? Do you think that my line is GTO, so flop is a pure bet, turn is a mix, river is indeed a pure shove? Or do you think it's B, where the turn is actually more of a 20-80 mix? So we are not supposed to barrel this turn at a decent frequency, but a pretty low frequency, and flop and river are indeed pure bets? Or do you think both flop and turn are actually both low frequency bets, and river is a pure shove? Or do you think it's the last option? Do you think that the flop is already a 50-50 mix and the turn is a pure check? So I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it and pause the video, and then we'll go over the simulation. So let's go. So here we see our flop betting strategy, and we see that we are not really having a range bet on a board like this, which is kind of what I expected, even though the EV loss will probably not be very massive. But we can see that our combination, like the heart spade one, is already like pretty much a 50-50 mix. And we really do prefer to have like a club, and then like the club diamond version is probably like best, where we block a lot of floats and we block some, you know, immediate flop draws. So yeah, makes sense that we are not really betting the queen king off and ace jack off region at a very high frequency. So yeah, that's already like a learning point for me here. We see that our opponent's going to play a lot of calls. I think maybe people are slightly overfolding here, especially with this like king 10, king jack of hearts type of hands that are supposed to call, as well as like a fraction of like ace 9. That sort of stuff is like supposed to call a lot, or at least at frequency. So turn 8 of diamonds, and we see that king queen is pretty much pure checking, unless we have like the best version, which is club diamonds, which makes a lot of sense, and that is indeed betting like 3/4. And no reason why club diamond is so good. Like all of these combinations are all folding unless they have a club or diamond flush draw. So yeah, blocking the king and the queen with all the flush draws, like you were blocking quite a few hands that are going to always call. So it does make sense that this is like pretty much a very bad hand to continue to barrel, despite like our overbear advantage. We also see that our strategy on the turn with the double flush draw, like we have 1.8x pot or something roughly like that. So like our nines through queens are just shipping it in pretty much, unless again we have club diamond versions. But other than that, yeah, like all of these combinations with like heart spades definitely just want to rip it in almost pure. So yeah, definitely some learning points for me here, that we're not really supposed to barrel the king queen version, king queen offsuit that much. And if we take a look at the river line, we do see that the king is like very good. We're like close to shoving range here, which is maybe somewhat surprising. But yeah, so if we would have get there, like we're just gonna rip it in a lot. But I think a flop and turn nuance for me is very important here. So yeah, correct answer is D. Like flop is already mixing it up 50-50 with this combination, and the turn is pretty much pure checking. Like if you bet half pot flop, you're already narrowing down someone's range quite a bit. So the turn we want to be a lot more selective with our barrels and these offsuit combinations. You know, you really want to be nitpicky with the right suits, because, you know, blocking, unblocking 4 to 6 combinations, like pretty massive difference in someone's range. So yeah, answer D would be the correct one. Now let's go ahead to the second hand, which is going to be the queen 9 suited. We face a button open again. We 3-bet. The queen 9 suited again would be a mixed preflop. CD 10-6-4 rainbow. I think we're gonna play both a big bet and a small bet strategy, and I think that this hand definitely prefers to be in the big sizing. So my playing game was to basically bet big pure on the flop. Like we can get some better versions of our hand to fold. Plus quite a few turns where we can like bet call or shove on. Turn is the queen of spades. So we pick up a top pair hand, and I thought that we would have a mix on the turn between shove and half pot. Reason for that's that like both options seem very plausible. Like we can shove and get like most 10x to call, probably some other hands that need to call, like some ace high flush draws, some king jack of spades, some even some 6-7 suited probably just need to call at a frequency. So that's kind of my thought process, that shoving is a decent option, but also continuing for half pot makes a lot of sense on a card that is like pretty good for us. So in game, like between those two options, I wasn't sure about the exact frequency, but I went with a mix 50-50, and I rolled for the half pot option. My opponent calls, and river is the offsuit 8, and I thought that, you know, given our line and our opponent calling twice, I think we have a pretty clear value shove on the river. Think that there are some hands, some better hands that he's supposed to shove on the turn, so I'm pretty comfortable shoving it in for value here. And so that was my line here. Bet, bet, bet. Big size flop. Turn, mix it up between half pot and shove, and river pure shove. So that's what I went with. So do you think that my line A is indeed GTO, like the flop upsize, turn, mix, and river shove? Or do you think that the flop is already a mistake and it's pure small bet and check turn with this weakest top pair version? Or do you think it's going to be flop big bet, but the turn we're actually supposed to mix between check and block? You know, we can think of some reasons for that, like turn's pretty good for us. We can block bet and therefore value bet a bit wider of a range, and put a lot of hands into fairly tough spot. Or do you think it's answer D? Flop is a big bet and the turn is actually just a pure shove with this queen 9. So I'll give you 5 seconds again to think about this. and pause the video if you like. Okay, let's jump into the sim. So the 10-6-4, we see a lot of big bets and some smaller bets, and pretty much the queen 9 suiteds are all in the big bet region, except for the one without a backdoor flush draw. You know, that one is like a little bit more of a mix, but still like a 60, high in the 60% big bet. So yeah, we're mainly playing big bet check. And we're really not checking this board very much at all. So pretty interesting to see this being like range bet, big sizing mostly. And like I said, for exactly like a queen 9 suited, it makes a ton of sense. We see our opponent, who's going to be calling roughly 50% of the time. And the turn is the queen of spades. So we do see a little bit of everything going on here, but like we're also using the block sizing a little bit, but we're mainly betting half pot actually, and the queen 9 suited specifically is like roughly mixing 50-50 between half pot and shove. So yeah, I guess spoiler alert, kind of nailed this one so far about my play on the flop and the turn. We see, let's say, some other hands that really prefer this block sizing. So yeah, if we have a top set, you really want to block. You don't want to like fold out any hands that can improve, that are drawing that, right? Also, like jacks or jack 10 seem to be in there at decent frequency, as well as like some queen 10s, king 10s, like that 10x region, but also the king 10, ace 10 doing a fair bit of checking. Actually, king 10 is also half pot or block, like kind of in the middle between those. But yeah, the queen 9 suited, definitely pretty clear mix between half pot and shove. So let's see the reaction to these different sizings. So again, shove, we're pretty much targeting to get called by every 10. Like a 10 is really not supposed to fold ever. And like I said, some of these combinations like 6, 7, 5, 6, 4, 5 are all in there at some frequency. And, you know, ace 6 suited supposed to call every time, as well as like ace 4. That's actually only spades. But yeah, so we're clearly getting called by quite a few weaker combinations that we can get to stack off right now. And versus half pot, we're still keeping in some, you know, the one pair hands that are mixing it up against the shove are now like pretty much pure calling. And, you know, like I said, some ace, queen, queen, king, queen, jack are really supposed to just ship it in right here. So I imagine if this is true, then we're just going to be only shipping it in river if we got the exact river, the 8 of diamonds. So yeah, once there's actually a little bit of checking going on, but it's close to pure shove with the queen 9 of diamonds. You know, really not too many hands that have us beat at this point. So I guess we're pretty excited, still getting called by like every 10. And even some hands like 7-8 or 8-9 are supposed to call it like a pretty high frequency. You know, and our bluffs are going to come from like the ace-jack, king-jack type of stuff here. We're really supposed to like go for it with like the ace-jacks and like some of these suited ace-x hands. So yeah, I guess for this one, the answer is A, like the flop upsize turn makes river shove is pretty much our line here. So happy to see that I got one right here. Actually show you the results of this hand, and I forgot about showing you the last one as well. But this one we got called by a set of 10, so his play is also pure, like not much to say. The king queen hand we also got called by the 9-10 of clubs, so I won't go over it all again, but his play on the turn was pretty much like a pure fold with this 10 high flush draw. Like you're really not getting a comfortable price with like these 2 weak overcards with a flush draw. So yeah, he's supposed to fold that one on the turn, but guess he kind of got the perfect result there.